Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming over, for choosing this track. I'm really glad you chose to come to hear me. I'm very much looking towards the beer that's going to be very soon. Who else is going to look forward for this beer? Okay, good. I have very good news for you. This will be the shortest talk today. Hence, we are in the good advantage over the other room to run for the beer. Okay? But because I have plenty of time and this talk is really short, let me start by introducing myself. I'm Marcin Bazydlo. I'm a coder. I like what I do. I enjoy doing that things. It usually finishes up like that. That's how my day-to-day work feels. If you want to get in touch with me or contact me, please use Twitter. That's the easiest tool to get hang of me after the conference. Of course, you can approach me at any point. And please do ask questions during the presentation, like we have, as I said, plenty of time. I work for V Interactive, which is a company based in London. We have development centers all around Europe. We support e-commerce. Basically, there will be part cut it off. So basically, we are this nasty little thing that pops up when you try to leave the site, but doesn't allow you to. That's us. Maybe customers don't like us so much. Like our customers love us because we actually increase conversion, and that's what actually matters to me. I'm actually bringing a value to my customers. That's a really cool thing. And by the way, we are hiring. I'm born in Poland. I was learning English in Poland as well. And for my whole life, I was taught that the way English people greet each other with the simple phrase, "How are you?" And the only correct answer I was being told is, "I'm fine, thanks," or "I'm fine, thank you." I moved to London about 5 years ago, and being all well prepared about English and very proud of my English skills. First time I got out of elevator, somebody passed me by and said, "How are you?" I was really trying to say, "I'm fine, thank you." About "I'm fine," I was seeing the back of the person, and 10 meters later, I was finished with "thank you." It felt really awkward to say "thank you" to the back of the other person. Over time, I learned that it's not the only correct answer. And the closer I got with different people, I got different answers. So on Mondays, I sometimes got, "I hate Mondays." In London in particular, I was getting "my commute sucks" quite often. Or if somebody didn't want to speak too much, but they also were giving me like, "I'm not too bad," or "I'm good." Many different answers. And I was like, because of this peculiar experience I had at the beginning, I was thinking, that it's really like, whether it's good or bad to greet yourself in such a manner. And I decided that it's pretty good. Like, you're not actually going to call somebody else and asking, "How is Mary? How is John?" I'm not going to do that. I'm actually asking the direct question to the person involved. It's actually a good, well-aimed question to the right actor, to the person I'm interested about. I'm not going to check their journey time. I'm not going to check the weather at their home. I'm not doing any of those things. I'm actually asking the person who knows most and is best prepared to give me answer about their own status, about how they are feeling, how they are doing. And I'm also not taking too much time about that. I'm just asking the question and getting answer back. That's pretty neat, right? Direct question, simple answer, that's all you need. So what would happen if we applied the same thinking into monitoring, into checking our services? Instead of doing all the things like we do, calling husband, wife, checking behind the back, or like thinking long how they do, we ask the service itself, "How are you?" And that's exactly the topic of this talk. But before we go into the meat, little step back. Who is monitoring their applications in production right now? Or here? Okay, around half of the room. That's not exactly what I expected. So, for the other half, I've got a slide. Why you should do monitoring. Why monitoring matters. It's really important. So monitoring is a little bit like automated debugging. It's much less effort. If you're lazy, I am very lazy. Definitely have monitoring. It's much better for you and for your colleagues and everybody. It's basically automating the debugging. Debugging is not fun. If you can automate it, great. It's much faster. Much faster than manual checking. You get answer like almost immediately. It's discrete and continuous. It means that it happens all the time. You're checking things at the given periods of time. And because of that, you can start taking track of how your system was behaving. So you get the expected behavior of the system, but also you can pinpoint exact time when the error or the change happened. We were seeing the Etsy talk just before. They have really nice monitors, and they're pinpointing exact times when the deployments are happening. That's all hooked on into monitoring. That's exactly how they know that the problem started at this point, not the other. Monitoring is eliminating loads of other possibilities, things you think that could affect you but are not actually doing it. They help you to understand where the solution might be. It's not always obvious where the solution might be, and the monitoring helps you to uncover where the solution is. It can expose recurring problems. These are those sweet little problems that happen only 3 a.m. for half an hour, right? I had actually that problem, and it was actually uncovered by monitoring. It's really great. The problem was happening only around midnight when the data centers between Europe data center and US data center were synchronizing database backups. Only at that time, my service was not available. Great, right? It speeds up deployment, and I will show you how later on. Monitoring is absolutely great for deployments. Hooking up your monitoring and deployments together is basically great synergy. It creates so much value. And finally, monitoring is a good documentation. We heard about the documentation, living documentation also before. I'm just restating that here. So everyone needs monitoring. You're not monitoring your applications now, start thinking about it immediately. Start simple, do anything, but have any bit of monitoring. It's really, really crucial. It's really professional to have it. But I know it's not easy. Monitoring is yet another tool. Something extra you need to learn, something extra you need to integrate into your application. I'm a developer myself. I care about features. I care about change. I care about business value. I don't care about extra monitoring tool. Neither my business. I need to constantly argue that we need to monitoring. The best point to argue is usually after failure. And that's the point when the business starts to hear to me. Yeah, that's not our core business. That's not something I really care about too much. You need to pay time and money to have it. And the existing solutions that were presented multiple times, they ain't cheap, okay? Bear in mind, as you scale up your application, the costs will rise. They will also change the way you implement and design your application, because they charge you by number of requests. And each request is costing you regardless if it's making money or not. This will change the design of your application over time, because you realize that you can save money by doing less requests. It might be good, it might not be good, but it will change the design. Those systems that work out of the box quite often show you everything, rather what you care for. They show you a number of requests that succeeded or failed. They show you the disk status. They show you the memory. These are all valid and very good information to have. Like, I'm not saying that they are useless, but these are not the particular things you care about. What you care about is conversions. You care about the things that make money. You care about search results effects. So, for example, monitoring systems quite often will show you failing requests, 500s, but they don't tell you that your request succeeded but returned 0 results, which is equally problematic for your product. And second part of that is that they are quite hard to customize. You need to learn even more and extend your knowledge even more to customize those tools to your needs. Those solutions sometimes present themselves to be very easy. They will tell you, oh, you just add this extra line of configuration, this little snippet of code, and we will monitor and track the information for you. That often is not the case, but there's also a problem of hidden complexity here. The first question to ask yourself is how the data is being transferred from your application into their data center. Because if that's UDP, then does it mean that if my network is overloaded, my data is not being transferred? If that's TCP, am I sure that it's only single TCP connection, or there will be multiple TCP connections per each of my connections, which will hinder the amount of traffic I can keep in? Both of those errors happen to me with the big vendors of the monitoring tools available over here. In one case, actually, the built-in, really good, well-supported vendor took my application down. Okay, it was misconfigured. I agree, there was problem on my part, but the problem was that there was complexity I didn't understand, and I thought it would just work for me. Finally, you can easily get vendor locked in. That's super easy. Monitoring systems tend to live very, very long because people get accustomed to them. Your CTO at some point will start looking at your dashboards, depending on who he is. But once that happens, that's almost impossible to change your monitoring vendor. Like really, really hard. Every time I try to do it, I landed with one extra monitoring tool rather than getting rid of the old one. Okay, so I was ranting about my problems. Maybe I'm a stupid person. Maybe I'm doing things wrong. But how monitoring should be, in my opinion? What do I think it should be? I think it should be simple. I don't care about monitoring, therefore it should be simple. It should just work. It should be extensible. I'm a coder, I'm a programmer. I can extend things. I can write things. I want to tell monitoring systems what I want to monitor. I don't want to spend too much time on doing that, obviously. But I understand the domain, and I would like to be able to monitor the things I really care about. It would be cool to have it consistent because, yeah, it allows better communication between different teams, between different groups, ops and devs. It's basically having things consistent makes it easier to understand. And it would be cool to have it distributed if your application is distributed. So if you live in the microservices world, then have it distributed. If I have monolith, yeah, I don't probably care that much. But it would be cool that my solution should kind of scale up with my application. And yeah, it even changed the slide. Amazing. That's my solution. It was created over 2 days. Like, don't expect anything too big, okay? But help me out. This is manual. 3 steps, okay? Somebody help me. What's that? Sorry? Call. Exactly. That's a call. We call, check. We call service status. Because I was mostly doing web applications and microservices, I kind of keep it in RESTful / HTTP manner. So we call service status endpoint. Simple, easy. Everybody can call endpoint? Yeah, probably. You can use your browser to do that. Step number 2. Exactly. We check the status code. HTTP calls have status codes, which are 200s, 400s, 2XX, whatever. If it's 200, it means we are happy bunnies. Everything works. My system is perfect. We can go back to sleep. If it's not 200, there's a problem. And step number 3, the hardest one. Kind of, yeah, pretty close, not there. Investigate, but where? That's good. First bit is investigate. Not in logs. In document body. In what was returned from the same call. We get the status code, which tells us whether it was good or not in general, but we will look into the body of the message to find out what are the details. Okay, I know that the half of the audience at least is coders, so I translate it to code as well. It will be much easier. So again, same thing. We get service status endpoint, we assign that to our response. If the response is 200, yeah, good. But we also can tell what we checked, just in case like we didn't check everything. Or if it doesn't work, we return that it's failure, and in the body we'll tell all the details how it will be doing. Hey, how I'm doing with time? Great. We are 15 minutes in talk. I'm finishing. There's an example of that, how it looks on my machine. Yeah, I hope that the final rows can also read that. If not, I will read that out loud. I called the service status endpoint of one of my applications, and back I got message. It was 200 here. I didn't say it, but monitor results is basically an array, which is a list of different results. So first result is monitor name is vapps database monitor. What do I monitor? My database. Was it successful? True. Yeah, it is successful. If it wasn't, I would be now fixing it, not talking to you. And metadata is basically a bag of information about what was done. I like to be very informative. And here I said database exists, succeeded, true. Okay, I checked that database exists. So in my case, I checked that there's connection okay. I had a credential enough to check it. I didn't check that the tables are there and that they're populated. I could do that if I thought that this is valuable. I would do that if I thought this is valuable. In this case, I wouldn't. I didn't. And I'm explicitly saying what I did. So somebody else looking at it will know straight away what the check is doing. Nobody has to infer what's actual implementation of that. And we've got second one, which is live data Redis monitor, one of the instances of Redis, okay? Successful again, true, great. Metadata, successfully written and retrieved data from live data Redis instance, okay? I'm saying that. If I had a problem, if the successful was false here, in the metadata I would put all the information I could virtually find. I would have stack trace, I would have exception message, I would have inner exception if you have some things like that, I would have kind of call IDs, everything I could possibly have to later on figure out in logs or anywhere I can what's going down. Hopefully, information here will be able to tell me straight away what I need to do to fix it. And that's it. I'm done with my talk, and I'm in 15 minutes. Great. Any questions? There's a question over here. Yeah? Okay, cool. Let me repeat the question to make sure that I understood you correctly and everybody can hear it. So basically, the question is, what's the CAC type versus Nagios approach? Whereas one is red-green, basically approach, red-green unknown approach versus more detailed information tooling. So my take on this is I don't care. I have my own implementation that's going to give back to Nagios only red-green. To the other tool, if it can read down the details, more information. The way I integrated with Nagios was that Nagios was checking whether I'm red or green. If it was red, then I was kind of grabbing things. I had logging on the other side, and logs I had details. So I kind of merged both worlds for my own take. But what I care about is that I have this endpoint, and it's kind of consistent within my company. And now other team can put in either detailed or generic monitoring on top of that. If they change the monitoring system, they don't need to tell me. They can do it behind my back. They can test both side by side, actually. My monitoring will still be there. There was a question on the back?
How would you compare your approach to Coda-Hail metrics library, or the Spring Boot health endpoints, or is it similar for different platforms, or do you see a difference?
There's one thing about all those solutions that you tell me, that they kind of tell you that they work out of the box and they will monitor your endpoints. So they give you only generic information about your endpoints. You could possibly customize them. It depends. If you're very proficient with the tool, yeah, go for it. Use it. That's absolutely fine. The approach I'm kind of pitching here, because what I'm doing is pitching. I'm missing some details, obviously. The approach I'm pitching over here has the benefit that this is like platform independent. It's not the Spring thing, it's not the Node.js thing, it's not the C# thing. And the environment it was born for me was the environment that was highly polyglottic. We had multiple services in Go, Node.js, C#, Java, and everything else. It was pretty hard to get a very kind of consistent approach for that. With this, we kind of agreed, okay, service status, that's where you get endpoint. However, the same trend is happening in many places. I got some inspiration from Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch has this kind of endpoint. It's not called service status, but something else. It tells you about the state of the cluster if you go there. Mesos expects that your applications have a health endpoint. It's again kind of almost the same thing. It expects for the application to run, it needs to be 200, and that's good. You could use the same thing. I like my service status pages to take a little bit longer in case like the caches need to warm up or something like that. But this is detail. That's not important here. Something? Yeah. Okay, let me flip the table for a sec. What do you think about that?
I would say that as I've seen in my 12 years career, both in operation and development, I cannot rely on the monitoring that developers are doing by themselves or writing into the code, that they will just monitor that.
I think you have big, yeah?
The issue is that maybe I haven't handed over the responsibility as well. Maybe this is the clutch in this point.
I would go for that. I don't think your actual problem right now is monitoring. I think your problem is ownership. I think you have very big, deep-in problem of who owns the system. Yeah. Because you cannot trust, you just told me that you cannot trust somebody who is making deep inside changes into your system. Monitoring is only a bit of it. They are actually adding features and changing features. And you don't trust them. That's a big problem. Coming back to your initial question, I think they are orthogonal. You can have both. Why not? This will give you something that you're very much missing. It will give you developer view of the application thing. It will give you conversions and so on. Obviously, you want to have the I/O input into it.
I just thought the functional monitoring as itself. So these examples that you have, you can have in every monitoring and for free as example. But the real thing is actually in functional monitoring.
Yeah. I think the functional monitoring, but in functional monitoring, it's always customized, isn't it?
Yes, also, but if we are monitoring the endpoints, then it's maybe sometimes easier to do it with a tool, not to just write the monitoring code. If we are monitoring both the, let's say, the endpoints, so why to do the monitoring while the tool does it for us? I fully understand that the question is that then we are depending on a vendor. But
that's only half of the story. The other very big thing for me is that this is a general. So it tells you it's 200 or not 200. That's what those two tools does. They don't understand the body or the meaning of this message. They don't know whether the response was valid or not. You can still give a very invalid message and return 200. And that's the biggest problem I have with those tools. They don't give me the exact answer. Okay.
I was just curious. So I think I understand the idea of a service check of that nature, but can you give an example of how that manifests in a system? Like how does it look like in a wider system?
Very good question. Can I keep it for a second and come back to it later on? Any more questions at that point? Oh, great. So it isn't the end of the presentation. I was just lying. I just wanted you to ask me all the questions at that point. I have a question for you, though. Do you think this is a simple solution? I think it is. Just one person thinks this is simple? Really? Wow, I screwed up. I would love to know afterwards, if you don't think it's a simple solution, come back to me and tell me why it's not. I would really love it. I really think, obviously, that myself, this is very simple. Is it extensible? You really don't think it's extensible? It's extensible by default. You have to write a monitor. Like, you need to extend it in order to use it. There's no way you are going to use this monitoring without extending it. You need to start by extending it with your own implementation of the monitor. There's no other thing. Is it consistent? I don't think it is. I don't think there's any chance it is consistent. You need to agree within your team to get it consistent. It's exactly the same as anything vendor-like or not. If you agree and all your systems and everybody else is doing the same, great. If you don't have this agreement, it don't help you on that. And is it distributed? I'm not going to ask because I get very mixed answers here. Because it lives, that comes into your question. Not here, here. That comes into your question. It is as distributed as your application, right? So whenever your instance of your application lives, there is a little bit service status endpoint. If you have services, then that's good. If you have application, it might be a little bit harder to implement it. I will still find a way to get there, probably. So you got your instance and a service status endpoint, some other app, service status endpoint, and so on and so on. Some monitoring tool, again, I don't really care whether it's Zabbix, Nagios, Sensu, whatever else. Each of those will go to the same endpoint. They will know how to go there, and they will find about the monitoring of each of the applications. So different applications, and they will all be monitored different things also can be added without changing the monitoring tool. Deployment tool, TeamCity Jenkins, again, I will come back to that in a second, how this plays in together, how it works on, and yourself. You can use browser, you can use CRL, you can use Postman, whatever you like. You just kind of go to the endpoint and you get information about your application right away. One thing that happens to me is that people, like I'm the owner of part of the code of one of the microservices. And when there's something supposedly wrong with my microservice, people will come to me and ask Marcin how your microservice is behaving. And what I usually do is I just send them link to the service status. I go there myself as well, and I say, like, it's OK, you can check yourself there. Over time, number of questions will cease down, because people will start checking themselves. And if everything is fine, they will stop bothering you. And that's really good. There was a question.
I presume you are going to show us how you aggregate all those statuses for Jenkins, for example.
For Jenkins.
Was
So the deployment, yeah, deployment I will show. If you're interested more here, then I don't show it. That bit, I don't show it on purpose because I'm a developer. I don't really know how to do it well. I'm leaving that to the monitoring people who are much more.
wanted to know that you are aggregating the statuses for deployment.
No, I'm trying not to aggregate them as much as I can. I'm trying to not aggregate them. These are basically not a system checks. They are checks of the local application. That's one thing to infer. Like when I'm checking this, I'm checking only this server. I'm not even remotely remoting about, like saying about the system. It's how are you? I'm fine, thanks. That's it.
When you're deploying, you need to have the status.
Let's go to deployment straight away. OK, so how my deployment works in together with that thing. I really find it fun that it helps me. So I have a deployment tool, TeamCity, Jenkins, Octopus, whatever. I first tell my server, leave the load balancer, right? I'm not going to deploy to a server that's live handling traffic. I know there are solutions which can do that. I really don't like that approach. I'm not a telecom company. I don't need to do that. I don't have one switch that I need to change over time. My application can go out of the load balancer, so I'm taking it out of the load balancer. That's much safer. I can now tear down, do whatever I want to the server. It won't affect any of my users, OK? My deployment can fail at this point to this server, and I still won't affect any user. Nobody will notice I was doing anything wrong, OK? So at this point, I'm doing the most risky bit. I'm deploying. The code is there. It's ready. I'm going to check service status. That's it. Service status will report me the internal state of the application. One thing that used to happen to us multiple times before we implemented that approach, in both companies, I implemented it in 2 companies already, it's kind of traveling with me, is configuration was the most risky bit of the deployment, because configuration is always environment specific. Configuration always differs between production and pre-production by definition. Like in pre-production, you go to different servers, and in production, you go to different servers. And if you've had a problem in your configuration previously, you would know only after deployment that you broken something. With that, I'm figuring that out during deployment. I'm checking the service status, and this will tell me straight away, OK, some of the invariants, some of the things that should work are not working as expected. Hence, the deployment cannot proceed. But if they are OK, I'm putting server back on load balancer. So I'm not really aggregating it across things. I will switch to the next server, done. Does it answer your question, or not really?
So that's all automated?
Yeah. If you look at that, like, Octopus actually is giving me option to do it automatically. I was doing that with the TeamCity before, and I had like extra step saying, I was doing that in halves. First half out of load balancer, deploy, check service status to each of the servers, because believe me or not, split brain can happen. And the only way to figure out about the split brain problem is to ask the direct application over there if it's working correctly. I was actually one of the few who was using Docker, and same thing happened to us with the Docker. We had the Docker like particular servers malfunctioning or VMware servers malfunctioning. Again, it was telling us that this server is down. Okay, all the other ones were fine. Just this one was down. So that's deployment. And I told you, okay?
So one question. So post-deployment, are the service checks
running
continuously?
Oh, yes.
No.
Yes.
So like, do you ever face a situation of the service
No, I didn't came across that thing. It's totally possible. It's obviously a very good point. It's a risk. If you
I was just curious because it's synchronous in that you are hitting the server and together responding. You're doing
yes.
it simultaneously.
Yes, I had a problem which was manifesting a little bit earlier than overwhelming the server. Obviously, that is a risk. The problem was manifesting that the service status check was taking too long, right? It should take under a minute, like honestly, because you don't want to have this answer quickly. How are you? 1, 2, 3, 4. Waiting for a minute to get an answer is not acceptable. So it definitely should happen under a minute. So when I had a check that was taking over a minute, I started to implement caching inside of the monitor. It's not a big deal. You just put a cache. Like, I don't know what kind of libraries or tools you use. I had just one extra library, and I use caching over here. So I use the same thing over here. It's like a no-brainer. But I cached in the response, and I was sending the cache response back on the service status check. But whenever the service status check was like every 5 minutes, I was refreshing that cache. So yeah, but that's a risk. You could possibly do that. We did that in the logging infrastructure, or the graphing, like the Grafana or the Elasticsearch. That's where when we kind of logged all the statuses, and I wanted to check like the whole status of the application. I was more looking for the failures, but yeah, I was aggregating sometimes then. But it's not crucial here because like for the deployment. Totally, like I'm going server by server or half by half, so I don't really want to aggregate that. And for regular thing, you are more looking like on the flow of the responses. So again, you don't really need to do that. Yes, you could. Obviously, you could. Yeah. One way, what I do, like I never automated it, but when I'm checking my system myself in production, I don't have access to production machines yet. Like. That's a company policy that's being changed, but I don't have access to the servers in here. I can change the tool, I can deploy code, but I cannot reach that endpoint from my machine. What I'm doing from my machine is I'm reaching this endpoint via load balancer, which kind of is aggregating it for me. I'm kind of inferring that if one works, the others were working.
Normally there is an option to set some cookie or something so that load balancer will route it to some concrete.
Yeah, I could try that. I think I would basically fight with my team and get access to the machines themselves.
Ask for out-of-pen for the service status. This way, it wouldn't bother customers when text takes too long, and also get things maybe out of some other channel.
Could be. I'm trying to keep service status checks quick, like that for many reasons. I'm not going to go into details in here, but from my experience, every check that was taking too long was a pain. Like with deployment. Deployment also needs to happen quick, so I cannot have a long check during the deployment. Okay, little bit of pitching. I love it. You probably know I'm a great fan of it. It's very simple. So first of all, I own it, or you own it. If you do it, you're responsible for the monitoring strategy. You're not leveraging that work on somebody else. You're not trying to convince somebody else to put monitoring for your application for you. You don't need to transfer this domain knowledge into somebody else. You're writing your code, and you're using the same thing, the same tool to write your monitoring. You can even execute the same paths that work on your for your application to check that it's behaving as expected. I cannot really say that because nobody here almost said that it's easily customizable, but I still think it is. You write the monitor, so you can put into monitor whatever you want to. One thing we did with the post-mortems is that whenever there was a problem, a failure, often the post-mortem action was add a monitor for that. So at least we would know that it won't happen again without our knowledge. Yeah, the deployments are much more reliable because service status is basically a testing during deployment. This is like a smoke test, but also very detailed about the information. Yeah, it's very easy to check. As I told you, you just can go there and you see the status of the application yourself very easily, very quickly. So you can do that at any point of the time, but you can also do it periodically. Check it over and over again. Note the things. The thing we discussed over here, little bit. We touched on this, but never didn't drill into it. I think the perspective is very important. Here, this is the perspective of the application. That's check happening from your application. It doesn't matter that I can reach the database server. It's not important. It's important that my application can reach the database server. Because of the different VPNs, it happens to me frequently that I can reach the database server, but my application cannot, or some other service, whatever. You can decide whether it's simple or complex. You can have 100 monitors, you can have 2 monitors or 1. It's still okay. You decide how much monitoring you want to put into it. And build up on that. One thing I showed you is that monitor contains documentation. So inside of the monitor, we have metadata, and this metadata tells us what are expectations and invariants of the system. But the other thing is that monitor is documentation. Everything that I check is actually checking, like showing me what I'm expecting. I was checking for a database. My system is using database. I was, by the way, using that when we were creating a new environment, and nobody really remembered all the things that were necessary to get application running. We could have nice documentation, but the documentation is never up to date. We just deployed the code, had the server there. It was failing. We went to the service status, and service status gave us checklist of all the things we are missing. And we are kind of using, getting monitors green one by one. I tried and tested it in 2 companies, and it worked for us. It might not work for you. There are different scenarios, different people. I'm not saying this is a silver bullet for everything. And we had loads of other monitoring tools around it. We had good logging. Even now we have pretty nice logging, and so on. So it's not solving every problem for everybody. It's not DevOps, okay? It's not Agile either, but this is a tool that you can have in your toolbox. It could be very useful. And how do we spend this time? We have 30 minutes. Okay, I can show you code. The code is pretty simple. That's implementation. That's not how you consume it. It's not how you use it, which I was showing you before. That's how to do it, how to implement it. So I have an interface. I'm showing you C#, but it doesn't matter. The interface of the status monitor. So this every check, every service status will implement that interface. It has a name, right? Name is good. It will tell us what the service status monitor name is, and a single execute method without any parameters returning result. Very simple method, I think. Simply would be execute void, but it doesn't give me any information, so I cannot really cut off from here. And that's what it returns me. So when I do a check, the check will also like have a name, so I will know that this is result for this monitor. Was it successful or not? And the big bag of data, like everything that could be useful. Have the data, keep it close. And a controller, right? I used NaNCFX, which is a micro framework for C#, but there are micro frameworks for any language, and they are really good for this kind of stuff. So I have a get endpoint with service status, and there I have monitors, which I get here as a list, right? And then as parallel, which means like I will execute them in parallel, and I will basically aggregate results from each of the monitors and return the list of those. That's it. That's what we show. So there. I'm kind of afraid that the other talk finished earlier. I lost the competition. I feel really bad about that. Okay, and then there's a second endpoint. That is, you don't need to have it, but it's nice to have. I have service status with the monitor name afterwards, so I can have check for like single monitor only. It's very useful when you have something failing and somebody asks you, please, could you check that again? Because we are kind of working on it, but we are not sure whether we succeeded or not. Again, you send the link to this endpoint, and they will have very quickly answer to their particular question. Is this bit working? In my case of, I don't know, Redis or Google connection, it would be like, yeah, go to the Redis monitor. And here I just changed, instead of doing all of them, I just grabbed the first one. And that's it. I even tried the monitoring-driven development. I started with monitor first and then implemented the feature. It was just fooling around. But the case was that I didn't really understand the solution I was doing, and I had to write a spike. I had to kind of connect to it, see whether I can grab the data. And I thought, like, OK, I can either write a spike and throw it away, or I can just connect to it and grab the data and return that as monitor result. And this stayed with me as a monitor. So I kind of know now that the storage exists, and I can grab the data from it. So credentials are OK. And this time, that's the final slide, really. If there are still any questions, I'm happy to answer, and thank you very much.